should men be able to compete in women's sports? Moreover, should men be able to box women at the Olympics? And this is the question. And what a tricky question. And I'm advising you, you're probably not talented enough at this to have the conversation. I mean, you're opening yourself to a landmine right off the bat. When you said, can men enter a bracket against women? You're opening yourself up, because ultimately the argument is that's not a man. That's a woman. No, men cannot compete against women. That is officially the answer. Right here, right now, today. So you have somebody trying to have a meaningful conversation about it. Like, okay, but wait a minute. You got a man and he's in the women's division. They're telling you, no, I don't. That is not a man in a women's division. Those are all women within that division. They say, but the person I'm calling a man, because no other word has been taught to me. I don't say that to insult you. That's the word I've always been taught. But that person that I'm calling a man 2 years ago competed in a different bracket, and it was the men's bracket. So that person was with the men then, but is now. And do you see where the conversation right off the bat? Now, I don't have a problem. You're not going to have heat with me. I'm letting you know you're not going to have a very meaningful conversation with people like me that are influencers who matter within the space because of how sensitive it can get. I am telling you. And it won't happen now because I've called it out. But had I not, it would have happened with what I've already said. A man is boxing women at the Olympics. That right there, by the social standards and vernacular that many people are trying to pass, and even has passed throughout the country of Canada, would be inappropriate, and it would be wrong. There is not two men in the women's division in boxing at the Olympics. Do you see where it's confusing? Okay. Now, here is the larger part that I got to illustrate for you guys. And the whole reason I'm here to make this piece. And there are a few things that I enjoy more than law. I truly find that fun. My sister's a lawyer. When she went through law school, she ended up, her husband, my brother-in-law Clifton, they met in law school. So like when I'm having dinners and things like this, then my brother-in-law Clifton's father is a lawyer. And I mean, it's one of these things where you're at the dinner table and a lot of these topics are coming up. But one thing that I did learn as an observer, one thing that was well known to them, but I didn't understand, I had to come along with, is that there are not facts that mean they're indisputable. See, when I was growing up, that's what a fact meant. If something was a fact, that was indisputable. That was proven as a fact. That was science. It was a fact. I didn't realize my entire life. I was over 30 years old when I found out that fact does not mean it's indisputable. I was over 30 years old when I found out it's science doesn't mean it's irrefutable and it's proven and it's accepted. It's one of these things. So when you start understanding that, eventually you get to the category where you realize there is no such thing as law in terms of somebody can't come to you and go, yeah, it's written right here and this is the law and you do this or else. They are sharing their opinion of the law, but they're only sharing their opinion. Then you start to learn it's got to be equal. So even though I'm not breaking down laws, right? I'm not telling you to go to a law library and look at all these books from floor to ceiling and nobody in the world knows what's in all those books. I'm not telling you that level of ridiculous. I'm talking about the library itself. Okay? If every law is within a library, I'm talking about the actual library. Before you start digging into it, they've got to be equal. Give you a fine example. There's a city. And guy comes in and he's gonna open up an establishment. So he's gonna sell beer. He's gonna sell beer, have the right to sell wine, whiskey if he wanted to. So he's gonna go through the state control board for alcohol. So he does that. And he's got the name's, Sonny's Tavern. And they knew he was selling alcohol. He went in and got sanctioned to sell the alcohol. That wasn't an issue. They didn't want the word tavern, even though it was. They kind of explained this to him. Hey, we got restaurants all around here, and they're doing the same thing, but it's not quite in your face enough. And the reason is, we have a school just right up the road. And the school had to be, where you're serving alcohol, had to be 500 feet from a school. So there was other places that sat in this same area, which was 600 feet. They were within compliance, but the advertising of the alcohol, which is what they felt Tavern did. And they didn't approve his name. That was no problem. He went from Sonny's Tavern, he just went to Sonny's. So when he presents this to him, food is what he's putting first and foremost. Gonna have some food. Let me get my liquor license so I can do this. Is how he presents it, but he didn't owe them anything more. He did not mislead. He was not fraudulent. I'm sharing with you, this was his attitude and this was his presentation. So the day it's ready to open, he blacks out the windows. And that raises the question, why are you blacking out the windows? And he was turning it into a strip club. So they threw a fit. They picketed. They went to the papers. They called the police. They threw an absolute fit. I mean, this was as brutal and as hot as it possibly gets. The guy opening Sonny's Tavern, which he agreed to just call Sonny's, gave them an extremely fast lesson in the law, which is a topless bar is legal. There's not a difference. There is not a difference if you are painting a house, which is legal, or you are a owner of a topless bar. They're both legal. There's not multiple categories. And people love to think that there's a gray. They love to think there's a gray area, but there's not. There's not. So sure enough, they found a way, and the city came in and they wrote this guy a very meaningful check. It's $500,000 if you want to know what that deal was. For him to leave, and it was after he left, and only after he left that they found out there was no girls hired. He never had a plan. He never had a plan to make that a strip club. His plan had worked. His plan was to come in, get approval, get the license, get the liquor, everything, so that there was nowhere to stop him. And they would have backdoored him. Had they found it was going to be a strip club, they would have backdoored him through the state, told the liquor control, which is completely illegal, but that's still what would have happened. The state and city will do illegal things like that and interfere on a regular basis because you have what's known as recourse, and your recourse could take you more money and, by the way, multiple years. So they will do something like that, but this guy, Sonny, made sure he had everything in place and the bluff. And he knew it when he blacked the windows. It was like this special tape, it was black, and he painted it however he got it black. But this was what the people from the outside knows. Hey, why is he painting that up? Hey, we can't see inside this guy. Hey, what's he getting ready to do? Grand opening tomorrow. Grand opening of what? I'm sharing that with you. It's a very powerful story that you understand. That if you ever choose to go into law, that's where you find out right there in that moment. Right there. There was a regulation in place. To serve alcohol, you had to have a license to the state. He had one. You could not open a drinking establishment unless you serve X amount of food. He had that on his menu. You could not serve alcohol in this municipality within 500 feet of a school. He was 615 feet. He had done absolutely everything. Then he brought out what he knew was going to be a problem. He took the money and he went away. And it's so relevant that you understand that, because in the world of sport, when this started happening, I watched the gentleman that was testifying for the left. I watched him going out and saying, this is going to be a very small fraction. This is going to be a sprinkle. This is going to be just a dent. The numbers just aren't there. And there was a senator out of Louisiana, Kennedy. Nope. Kenny, he's not a Kennedy. Kenny, senator out of Louisiana, and he said to him, and he used Mike Tyson as an example. He said, well, what are you going to do if you're going to put female in there with Mike Tyson, and the person for the left, I'm just telling you guys what happened. So, well, sir, that is a totally different thing before you go into boxing. My gosh, you put a biological man with a biological, oh my gosh. And I remember as I watched this, and I remember the senator from Louisiana, his name's not Kennedy. What's his name? Kenny? I remember watching him accept that answer, and I remember being at home. And I remember being stunned. Because there is not a distinction within sport. If it's allowed in one, it's allowed in all. You don't get to have a mother's group come forward and say, we don't want a strip club. Well, he put the club in, and he's got all the licenses and did all of the ordinances that your city requires. They go, yeah, but this is different. No, it's not. It's not. There's not a distinction within the rules, and just because it comes to combat. See, that was the one where they all thought, the Megan Rappapones and everybody that was speaking about this coming into it, they all thought there was a difference, and should we ever get to that? And they did use Mike Tyson as an example, and I'm quoting right now, and I'm just sharing for you what is going on. And one of the biggest gripes right now within the media that is having a problem, that is raising an argument, is the fact that they're hitting one another. And if you think that's going to hold up, or you're like, that's just good common sense. But before you do any of that, before you go out and say those things, right? Anybody that comes out, oh, that's just common sense. Anybody that does that is now anointing themselves like a more logical person in the room. If you do that, you're missing the very first step. This isn't step 5. This isn't step number 15. You got the other 49 right. It's the very first step. They all are treated the same. Every business, you cannot have a distinction or tell a guy what he doesn't pay a higher tax rate. He's not held to a different standard. He's got to follow the same rules that this guy does. That's it. They're all the same. It's legal or it's not. And I watched it happen. I mean, I came through the sport as a pugilist. One of the few sports that's regulated by the government. One of the few jobs that you can even have. One of the few jobs, are you ready for that, where you got to be told yes by the government? And I watched it happen. In jurisdiction to jurisdiction and place after place, and them trying to say, right? Some of them say, you're unsportsmanlike, you can't get licensed here, and you're doing that. Unsportsmanlike, am I not allowed to talk? Well, you can talk, but you can't say certain things. Are you sure about that? You sure? Are you sure that's what you want to say? I had to do this to a commissioner one time. I said, do I got freedom of speech? Am I allowed to talk around here? Well, of course you can talk, but you can't just say that. What? Say it again. What? I can speak, but I can't say. Are you sure that you want to do that? Because they're all created the same. There's some sports that are silenced. You guys ever done amateur wrestling? Get a point taken away. You don't have to curse. You don't have to threaten your opponent. You don't have to say it angrily. You're not allowed to speak. So when you come into the world of sport, if you thought it was going to be good for baseball, if you thought it was okay for tennis, if you were cool with it, with the swimming, I'm just sharing with you. When it comes to an authority that's going to come in and sanction something, they all have to be treated the same. Business, sport, anything where you have a supervision. Now, they can give authority to regulatory bodies. That's true. You could do that. But I'm trying to let you know that when the guy came in and laughed at the Louisiana Center who said, would you put a woman in there with Mike Tyson? Can Mike Tyson come forward and now go into that bracket? And they laughed. That's ridiculous. Combat, that's totally different. The only leader that stepped forward and did not hedge on this, and I mean did not hedge, the only leader was Dana White. That's it. And now you even have the IOC, and you have them in a very tough spot. And it is complicated. Like, there's people at home that sit there at home and say, okay, well, they're different sports, but I'll use some common sense. Well, okay, great. I'm with you on that. How? And now when people get lost on too, I can't tell you how many people I've heard say that there's only 2 genders. I cannot even tell family members and people, like, I'm looking around, it's only 2 genders. Science says biology says there's only 2 genders. I took biology one time. The year was 1992. The high school West Lynn. And the teacher was Glenn Wolkenfeld. Hello to Mr. Wolkenfeld if he's out there. I don't remember all the things that we covered, but I know that one. And it wasn't two. I hear them say every biology book says there's two genders. I don't know if you've got a single biology book that says that. I'd love for you to pull that forward because it's not the one that Mr. Wolkenfeld used at Westland High School. That's my source. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you my own source. It's 3. Every biology book I've ever seen. Male, female, which is not distinguished, by the way, with genitalia, which is commonly believed to and also misrepresented. It's represented by ovary versus testy. And 3, hermaphrodite. I don't say any of that to try to be funny with you. In 1992 at Westland High School, per Mr. Wolkenfeld, you got asked that question on a test. That's the answer. How many genders? 3. But I hear him keep saying that every book in biology says, and it's only 2. Every book says 2. It's just an interesting thing. I just listen, it's an interesting thing. And you will come down to ultimately what your final question is. Like, you don't get to sit home and say what that person, you don't get to do that. That doesn't matter if you're left or right. You don't get to do that. So what does? What does do that? If the person comes in and they've got a full beard and some big muscles and they say, I am a woman, how is it that you are suggesting that we go about proving that they are not? How? And go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it and be immature. They're going to pull their pants down. I'm going to look at their genitals. Their genitals isn't what represents a male or a female. I'm just, 1992, Glenn Wolkenfeld. I mean, I'm citing my source for you. I'm citing you everything that I know about it, and I'm trying to be mature. But it's never been the genitals. So right there, that test has failed. I don't think that you said I'm going to have them pull their pants. I don't think that you did that. Because there again, I'm going to have to bring in over the top and tell you they're all treated the same. That means we got a lot of Olympians that are under 18. Okay? We got a lot of them that are over 18. They all must be treated the same. So do you really want to stand by? We're going to have somebody and we're going to check. Do you really want to stand by that? All right, then how are you going to do it? How are you going to do it? Somebody came forward one time and said, they're going to tell us. Somebody else came forward and said it's whatever they are going to be able to tell us which bracket they go in. And whether you like that answer or not, I've never heard you come up with a better one. I think that you would have very good ethical and very good moral reasons. I think that you might have a sophisticated answer as to answering it. That maybe it isn't, if I pull their pants down, I'm going to look at their gender. Maybe it's not. Maybe you have something else, but you've never brought it forward. I've heard people say, we're going to do their testosterone, we're going to pull. How are you going to do that in sport? How is that realistic? Do you know what it takes to one, get that, but 2, get those results back? How are you going to do that? Somebody came on today and they said, well, there's a swab test. We do a cholesterol, we can swab the inside of their mouth and we can get this information right. I mean, it's one of those things. It's one of those things. Really? And maybe there is a swab test, but you don't actually know that. You heard that today by somebody just like I did. Do you really want to do that? Do you really want to go around a tournament and do that? I came forth, I was putting on events here in Oregon, and they sued me 7 times. 7 times an endless fund known as the Attorney General's office sued me, and 7 times 24-year-old Chael Sonnen beat them. And one of the things that they wanted done is they wanted me to do a blood test. I said, why would I do that? I knew the answer, but I asked him, I got to make him say it on the record. In case somebody has HIV. And I said, why would that matter? I know the answers to these things, but I want them to say it. What they wanted to say was it would prohibit them from competing. I've got to explain to them, okay, every sport is the same. Which you have minors, you have adults, every sport is the same. Would you ever test a kid for HIV in baseball? No, the answer is no. And do you want to know why you want to do that, guys? Because what if you found out he had it? And before you don't think this question through and you go, well, I wouldn't let my kid play with it. Before you do that, what if I inform you he's 8 years old and he was born with it? And nobody knew it. And life's going to be hard enough, and his life's going to come to an end a lot faster. And he's going to be tormented. He's going to have all of this stuff over him, but that is his secret. That is his secret that he is bearing with him. He's going to out there. He's going to try to have a little bit of fun today with a game of baseball. And you drug tested him or blood tested him. You found out he had HIV, and you are the one that told everybody else. Is that your plan? Is your plan to tell him he can't play and he just keeps that quiet? The reason why was your plan to let him play but make sure that everybody else knows. Do you see the problem? Do you see the problem? And I told them happily, you can form a commission and you may blood test these guys. I am not going to deal with that lawsuit. One, of infringing on their privacy, but two, moreover, what if I find out he has something? And this hasn't been tested. We have not had an HIV positive person come in and sue the commissions yet. We have had him step down. I can think specifically of the boxer. I won't say his name. He lost his life. But I'll just share with you. When the commissions have come forward and said, I won't license you. You have HIV. I will not license you. Blood is traded places. I will not license you. They've done that with hepatitis. They've done these things, but they've gotten every athlete, when they inform them of this, they show them their blood results, and they send them the letter. They've got every one of them to go quiet and back off. Say, yeah, you're right. I knew that was a rule. I didn't know I had it. Now I know I have it. It excludes me. They haven't sued them yet. And that day will come, and when they do come, the commission's going to lose, and they're going to find out that all sports are created the same, and no different than you can inform the world and stop a kid from playing Little League at 8 years old if he was born with it. It doesn't make a bit of difference to if you're a grown man trading needles with a bunch of junkies. It doesn't make any difference. They're all the same. So if you would like a bracket of people that raised their hand and said, this is my category, to be able to do rowing, you don't get to change the rules when they start throwing punches. And ultimately, that would be the largest message that I could give you. I can't tell you the rules, and I can't tell you the laws. You've been told them. You tell other people them, and you believe them. You might be right, you might not. The only way to know, it's not if you agree, by the way, the only way to know is to contest it and go before a disinterested third party known as a judge. Absent of that, be real careful trying to tell me what's common sense.